Hi everyone! So you have decided to take on quilting and sewing as a hobby. So your next step is deciding on what to buy. Let me tell you, there are multiple options on pretty much anything in this industry. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you some of the basic tools that you will need to get into sewing, and also some tools that I like that aren't necessary, but you're going to want them. So let's get started. First things first is your sewing machine. This one here is a very simple machine. This is actually the same model of machine that I learned to sew on. This one here is actually the sewing machine my daughter has learned to sew on. It does the job. There are a few things as a quilter that you're going to want upgraded on. So my advice to you is to buy a machine in your budget that is at the higher range. If you can splurge a little bit on it, I would recommend that. So that will come standard in your machine more than likely is probably a thing of oil. If not, you need to purchase a thing of oil. This is a really big one. I'm pretty sure I got it at Hobby Lobby. It will last you a lifetime. You will need oil to maintenance your machine. Another thing that you will need, which it usually comes with the machine, is a little brush to brush all the lint out. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to take, on this machine, you'll want to take this plate off and you want to dust that out. It gets really linty in there, and the cleaner and the more maintained your machine is, the longer it will last. So what I use, which I tend to lose those little bitty brushes, is I use one of these. This is the hairstylist in me. I have these everywhere from a previous lifetime ago, and these work great as well. So that is your machine. Those are a few things that you need to look for. You will also need needles. I will tell you that needles are all treated differently. There are thicker needles, thinner needles. There are needles for the brand of machine. I would recommend that if you have, say you have a Singer machine, I would recommend looking into the Singer needles, because they make them for those machines. They also have universal ones that work great as well. As far as the thickness of the needle, it depends on what you are sewing with. So if you are sewing with jeans, you will need a different needle than what you will use to sew with your cotton material. So you'll just have to assess what material you are using to sew with and look for a needle that will fit your needs. Another thing that you will need is thread. Again, this is a very customizable kind of situation. They come in all different colors. They also come in different materials, and they come in different thicknesses. I will say that that I would probably just get white to sew your blocks. You're not going to see those threads anyways on the blocks. What you will see threads for that you will want to get colored for is like once you get to the quilting phase of your quilt, because you will see the threads in that stage of your process. A few other things. So after your machine, let me scoot this guy out of the way. Your next biggest investment is going to be your fabrics. Again, this is something that not all are treated equal. There are different textures, different patterns, different shapes, different sizes of fabrics. So what I would recommend as a beginner, this here is a line of fabric. What it does is it is fabrics that coordinate with each other, and they will look great together, and that's how they are designed. So I would recommend buying a line of fabric for your first quilt. It kind of takes the thought out of it, knowing that they do go together. I have done quilts before with different fabrics, and I've looked back and I'm like, those don't really go together. So it just kind of takes the guesswork out of it. That's what I would recommend. This here is my bundle that I sell in my Etsy shop. If you are interested, it's called Rosewood Fusion. It's a beautiful fabric, and it's so soft. That's another thing. There's different textures. So some of the cheaper fabrics, yes, they're great to practice on, but they just aren't soft. So just keep that in mind. Not all fabric is treated equal. This fabric here, I will post a link to my Etsy shop if you want to check it out. I sell these in different pre-cuts, and I also sell them as a whole bundle. So if you're interested, definitely check that out. And I will say this, you will be investing in fabric all the time because you will find all the fabric patterns and all the fabric textures that you're going to love, and you're going to make them all. So next thing that you are going to need is a good pair of scissors. Now this is something that you don't need a special kind of scissor, but what I would recommend is that you get a pair of scissors just for cutting fabric. And I say this because I have 3 children and they cut everything with scissors. They cut duct tape. That will cause your fabric to stick to your scissors. They cut popsicles. That's going to stain your fabric. So my recommendation is to go out and buy a good pair of scissors and put them with your sewing stuff, and don't use them for anything else. So this here is my go-to pair of scissors. It's a more specific to cutting fabric pair of scissors. My family, my entire family knows you do not cut anything with these scissors or you're going to be in trouble, because these are my fabric scissors. They're great. And what else people do is they'll cut sharp things with scissors. Like if you cut, we've cut pipe cleaners and they leave little nicks in your blades and it won't cut all the way through your fabric. So that's just a little tip for you. So next thing that you will need are pins. Pins are great. You will, when you watch a tutorial, if you see somebody on there that's not penning, they have probably been sewing for quite some time and they feel comfortable sewing without them. I will say as a new beginner, you will be penning everything and you're going to learn quicker if you pen it, because you're going to do it right the first time and you're not going to get frustrated with it. So have tons of pins. You can never have too many of these pins. So the next thing would probably be safety pins. This one is more for once you get to like the quilting phase of your quilt. So you have your quilt topper. You will also have a layer of batting, and then you will have your backing fabric. This is your quilt sandwich. And what you will want to do if you are sewing on your home sewing machine is you need to pen those together. And safety pins work great for that. Safety pins are also great for if you start a project and you don't have time to finish it, but you want to pin everything together so you don't lose it. You can just grab all of your fabrics and stick one of these in, and they'll all be together for when you are ready to do your next project. So another thing will be a seam ripper. This is a fancier seam ripper. This is one of the ugly sides of quilting. You are going to mess up. You are going to need one of these. You are going to need to rip your fabric apart and start over. So what I have here is it's got 2 sides. So it has a seam ripper on one side, and then it has a point on the other, which I don't use. I know a lot of people do, but I haven't found a need for it. This is great for when you're sewing and you kind of need to push the fabric a little closer to your needle so you don't have to use your fingers. So there's that. And then you will need, let me grab it, maybe. You will need an iron. So my family laughs at me. I iron all the time, but I do not iron clothes. I hate doing laundry and it's torture. So I use this iron a lot and I love it. So this one here is a little guy, super little. It has a steam feature, which is great, but not necessary. It's great for if you have fabric that has been wadded up in the bottom of your closet that you need to get all the wrinkles out of. That steam feature is great to get those like really stubborn wrinkles out. But this little guy works great for pressing seams and it's very handy. but a big iron will work as well. So it's completely up to you. It's whatever you have or whatever you can find that's in your budget. Also some things that you, of course, if you have an iron, you'll need an ironing board. This one here is, it's a tabletop ironing board. I got it, I think at IKEA for like 10 bucks. You really can't beat that. I don't have space in my area to put a giant iron. You can use a regular ironing board. You can use one of these tiny ones. It has legs on it, which is handy for my shorter table. But this table here, I just lay it flat on my table like it is and iron with it. So those are the basics of things that you will need to get started as a quilter. And so now I'm going to get into, I would call them basics, but you can do without them. You will definitely be wanting them. First things first is, let me grab it. First things first is going to be a cutting mat. This cutting mat is awesome. It's not a super big one. This is one of those things that I would recommend if you have it in the budget, buy as big of one as you can. You're going to think, what am I going to use that for? Trust me, you're going to want it. This one here is a 24 by 18 inch cutting mat. It has little grids on it that help you cut straighter, and it's just going to make your blocks come together a lot better than not using it. And it's a self-healing mat, so when you're cutting, it doesn't cut off like little bitty chunks of the board. So it's very helpful. So if you have a cutting mat, my next recommendation would be Rotary Blades. And these are, there's all different kinds of them, so keep that in mind. This is the one that I'm currently using. There is different brands that make them, and this one is a 45 millimeter. So there is two different, I think there's only two different sizes of blades that are pretty standard. But there's like this design where you hold it like this, and then there's this design that has a little handle that kind of protects your hand a little bit better. So it's a personal preference for you. This is the one I use currently because I am comfortable with them. I'm going to warn you though, these blades are so sharp. You barely have to nick your finger and blood is going to go everywhere. So just keep that in mind. Be super careful with these. I don't allow my daughter who sews to cut fabric with this yet. I just don't, I'm not comfortable with her using it. So keep that in mind. And you can also, sometimes I found some really good specials on, usually around like Black Friday and things like that. I have found specials where you can find a cutting mat and a rotary cutter as sold as like a set at the craft stores and different places online and things like that, that you can find them. So that would be something you can look into. Okay, so you have your cutting mat, you have your rotary blade. Your next thing is going to be your quilting rulers. These are something that is a personal preference for you because they make all different shapes and sizes and what's going to work for you. I'm going to show you the three main ones that I like to have on hand. But keep in mind, I have an entire drawer of rulers. So there's that. First things first is this big guy. It is a 6-inch by 24-inch. So my next ruler is basically the same thing as that one, just a little bit smaller. So this one here is a 3-inch by 18-inch. And my last ruler size that I love, because it is a Fiskars Ruler. It is an 8 by 8 inch. Yeah, an 8 by 8 inch square ruler. It has these lines on it where you can line it up when you're trimming like a half square triangle, or if you're just squaring up a square, it works great for that too. So those are my three sort of must-have rulers. Next thing that you don't need but is very handy are little snippers. These little snippers, they come in all different shapes and sizes. You're going to find the ones that fit for you. So this one was actually a pair of my grandma's, so they're kind of rusted, but they last forever. These, they cut like this. So they're a little bit different than a tiny little pair of scissors like this one. This one here these are my daughter's, and she really likes them because they're just like a little mini pair of scissors. These are great to keep by your sewing machine. They will help you sniff off any little pieces of thread that you see. They're also great for cutting off, like if you have a little corner that you need to cut off or anything like that. They're just super handy to have. So another couple things that are great to have is this pen. It is a water erasing pen. And so what that means is you will draw on your fabric with this. Say you need to draw a line across it and you need to sew down that line. That mark that you make is going to be on there until it gets washed, or if you just get it wet. So I really like these. They have other pens, like a friction pen and a heat pen, that work great too. But this one I like because I can mark on it and say I don't have time to finish it, and I can come back like a week or so later and that mark's still going to be there unless it gets wet, of course. So look into those. There's lots of different brands that make these, and this one's just a really good one. Another little ruler that is very handy is this little 1/2-inch ruler. And as you can see on it, there's a mark down the middle of it. And what is great is, like if you're doing, say, a half square triangle, you can mark on both sides of the ruler as you have it lined up in the middle. And you can sew down those lines, and that way your lines are going to be awesome across your square. So this little ruler is very handy. Again, not needed, but very handy. So lastly, see what I didn't talk about. Quilt patterns. This quilt pattern here is in my Etsy shop. I again it'll be in the description below, a link to my Etsy shop. But you will notice that quilt patterns are not all treated the same. So this quilt pattern here, you can use pre-cuts for. That's something I will talk to you about in future videos. But some quilt patterns require you to buy a specialty ruler. So that is something that you need to kind of keep in mind, that is something you're going to be investing in. And that is something that you will use, like you'll want to use it down the road more than once, obviously, to get your money's worth on it. So, but some quilt patterns use just your standard rulers, like the ones I showed you. The 3 different sizes will work with pretty much any normal quilt pattern. Other things you will want to invest in are things like books. This is a great book. I've been using it quite a bit. It kind of walks you through some of the basic terms of like your standard units of your block, like flying geese and 4-patch and things like that, which I will talk about in future videos as well. But books are kind of like quilt patterns. They're not all treated the same. Some of them require you to buy specialty rulers, and some of them do not. This one here, you can use your standard rulers for, and it works great. So just keep that in mind. Always kind of skim through them, kind of check it out and see if it says, you have to buy a certain ruler. And so I will show you what I mean by specialty rulers, because I have some, and I have some books that go with them. These are things that you will eventually invest in further into this hobby. And I'm telling you, you never quit investing in new ideas when it comes to quilting. So you're never going to run out of ideas. So keep that in mind. Okay, so first things first, I have this book, which I just got finished. I did my first Dresden probably a week ago. I don't know if I'm sold on them yet, but this was a fun. So this book here, it has a bunch of different patterns that you can use, but what you have to do is you have to buy the ruler. I know it's kind of hard to see, so let me grab a piece of material so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so as you can see on here, let me kind of get it to zoom in over here. As you can see on here, there's different lines. And so with these different lines, it helps you make different sizes of different blocks. And so as you can see here on the page, so you can see that they're using the same rulers, they're just making them different sizes. So this is something that was an investment that I have enjoyed, but I won't use that ruler near as much as my plain rulers. So that's just something to think about. So this is kind of an overview of things that I have decided that you need and things that I think you need and will want down the road. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, subscribe, like, thumbs up, all the things. So this video will be seen. Check back soon because I am doing a ton more videos. I plan on getting into a lot of different parts of sewing and quilting, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I want to thank you for joining me today. I know this was quite a long video. It kind of summarized things that you need to look for as a new quilter that, in my opinion, are important. So definitely check back. I'm going to be doing lots more videos for you new quilters. Even if you're not a new quilter, you are going to learn something. So I hope you all have a great day. Thank you. Bye.